Hi, and welcome everyone to another episode of Data Futurology. As you know, in Data Futurology, we aim to discuss the topics and challenges that are most relevant to leaders in the analytics and AI space today. We do that by speaking with leaders and executives from around the world around their journey, the solutions that they've created throughout their careers, the business value that they've brought, and how they got these new technologies, including AI, adopted in their organizations for maximum impact. The idea is that you can learn from these conversations and that it can help you do the same in your organizations. So we're very excited to continue that conversation today. Today, we're going to be talking about exploring the 3 technology pillars that are needed to successfully scale AI. So one of the big pieces of feedback that we've received from the audience is that a lot of organizations have focused in creating their data science capabilities and building that up, and that they feel like they can build models at the moment, but that the majority of these models are not making it to the customer. They're not making it to the pointy end of where they're creating a difference for somebody, and by that creating business value. So all the good work in creating the model is getting stuck and not living up to the promise that it has because it's not able to interact with the people that is going to make a difference in their lives and in their journey. So today we're going to be speaking about how to overcome those barriers and what are some of the pillars that can enable us to simplify and speed up that journey, which will be excellent. What we'll do is I'll throw over to the guests to hear about their background, their journey, get them to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into the main pillars of what we're going to be talking about today. So I might start with you, Scott. Could you tell us a little bit about, mate? And great to have you on the show. As I said before, I'm very excited for this conversation. Be looking forward to it. So first of all, how are you going today?
Good, thanks. It's a nice sunny day here in Queensland.
Yeah, very nice. Very good spot to be in as well. And tell us a little bit about your journey in the data space to date.
Yeah, perfect. So my journey didn't actually start in the data space. So early days in my career, I focused mainly in the telco industry and probably more of a technical role. Where my journey in the data space started was I was fortunate enough to get a role with a company called Spacetime Research, a small Australian company. And they invented and created one of the world's first columnar databases, and which was kind of leading edge technology at the time. Databases at that point were typically sort of relational databases, and EDWs weren't even that common. So at the time, the main customer base was working with stats agencies around the world, analysing censuses and things like that, which I found it really, really fascinating. So that's why I've remained in the data space and probably across a number of different technologies. So technology's changed across the years, going from sort of relational databases to enterprise data warehouses, through to distributed solutions. And now we're sort of moving into even more modern solutions using containerization and the likes. Also with a mix of on-prem and cloud, which starts to make things really interesting. So I've really enjoyed the journey and love playing in the space. And when I talk about the data space, it's mainly been around analytics, AI type solutions. And also, there's been a little bit of a mix. While it's mainly been technology organisations, I have worked with a couple of consulting groups. So, because I see that the sort of people, process, technology are as important as each other in this space.
Man, that is excellent, and I love that you've as the industry has matured, you've kept up with the trickier end of the challenges and not focus on using technology or using proving technology to solve kind of old problems. You've been moving up with the pace, so that's fantastic. Now, great to keen to hear your insights today.
It can be fun because I guess sometimes it's trying to keep up with technology is one thing, but working with sort of leading startup type organisations is quite exciting. I do find that it's, part of what I enjoy is educating the market. So when you come into a new technology, it's typically something that's new to organisations, and educating them in that space is as important.
That's awesome, man. Love it. That is great. Ridhav, how about from your side? Well, first of all, how are you going today? And tell us a bit about your journey so far.
Look, in Melbourne, so we're coming out of lockdown, so I think can't be happier. So absolutely started the day with a joy. So that's one thing. But I think from a journey point of view, very similar journey to Scott on a fairly technical level. So again, started on a technical as a developer, but one of the things that I always enjoyed doing was data and the performance engineering. So that's kind of how I segued away from a pure developer role to more data style roles. Where I started working with in-memory databases back in 2009 when, in-memory databases were a fairly niche market, moving from in-memory databases to the NoSQL systems to then big data technologies. More recently before HPE, Scott and I, we worked on a GPU database startup, which was again a cutting edge technology out there. And quite recently in HPE, which you would be surprising to hear, is we're running a small startup, within HPE, again, working on some cutting edge stack in the AI, ML, and the data space, which is again, very similar to Scott, as this is where, I've spent most of my career.
Man, super, super excited. So yeah, very keen to jump into that. Before we do, I'll quickly mention that so far we've had about 50% of people answer the poll. So thank you very much for the ones that have taken the time. For the people that haven't had a chance yet, please go ahead and answer the poll now if you can. That'd be great. So you mentioned that you guys have moved into a startup in HPE. And I know that a lot of people think, when they think HPE, they think of a hardware company. What is that? How does that work? And what does your the startup do?
I'm sure I can take that question. So look, I think HPE is obviously, a very, very sort of strong business from decades and decades, has seen various different shifts in the market. And obviously they're going on another transformation journey where, earlier customers used to buy infrastructure as it is, to more delivering infrastructure as a service capability, where customers can obviously do that in the cloud, but HPE is looking on that journey to deliver cloud level experiences to customers for their on-premises workload as well in this hybrid world. And I guess it made perfect sense for them to then, on top of the infrastructure as a service workloads, to start offering platform as a service workload, data workloads, which is where and AI workloads, which is where, our software startup comes into the picture, where HPE acquired a couple of startups. They invested almost a year and a lot of money in engineering to bring this stack together. To then provide those capabilities to customers. So we purely work still on the software side of the business, but then HPE itself is our customer who is using this technology to deliver platform as a service capability to their large install base.
Man, extremely, extremely exciting. And is that a new move for HPE to be moving into software, and how does this software fit into the rest of the organization and the strategy?
So this move, obviously HPE has had different experiences with the software business units in the past. So I believe this sort of approach of HPE is purely as an enabler. To start offering these capabilities to the customers. So this business is almost a few years old now. As I said, even though the brand itself called Ezmeral is fairly new, because after the acquisitions and after investing, the platform that HPE created has come out with a brand name called Ezmeral, but the technologies have been in production for over 10 years for various different use cases individually. So the brand, but still the business has seen a few years already and a number of large deployments as a combined platform too.
Yeah, that is great. Excellent. So with the on the wealth of experience that you both have, given your backgrounds, I think you're really well positioned to tell us a little bit about the challenges that you're seeing out in the market at the moment. What do you maybe I'll start with Scott. What do you guys see that organizations are wanting or needing to do in order to improve their businesses in the current market, from a data and AI perspective? What would be the main challenges that you're seeing?
Probably the first challenge I've experienced with a lot of the customers I talk to is access to the data. So data can live all over the place, as we've mentioned earlier. Siloed data exists in a lot of organisations. And being able to access all that data to get combined and unified insight out of it is quite key. Some of that data could live even in edge applications, and particularly in organisations like manufacturing, as an example, where you're getting machine data from some of the factories and out at the edge to be able to improve production performance, for example. So accessing all that data is one key thing. And now with the migration to cloud and cloud applications, you start to mix data across on-prem and in the cloud, which can become even more tricky to access it. When we talk about the cloud, I think that another key challenge is organisations being able to move applications to the cloud. So there is a bit of a trend of migration to cloud as part of a digital program that a lot of organisations have. But we find that as customers go through it, they very quickly find that not all applications lend themselves to being able to be put in the cloud, and then they start to get themselves in a bit of a mess. And they start to end up with data entanglement, data gravity around some of the applications that remain on-premise, and they start to come up with a very complex solution for something that they set out to actually do the opposite initially.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely trying to do the opposite. And for the people that don't know, can you describe data gravity?
So data gravity, if I try and simplify it, it's around the data that applications need. So different applications share data. They use interuse data for their operations, etc. So if you have, as a very simple example, two applications that talk together, you put one of those in the cloud, the other one stays on-prem. Now you've got data gravity and issues around accessing different applications accessing that data.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. Ridhav, how about from your perspective? What would you say some of the main challenges that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, very similar. So I think the key challenges starts from obviously the data side of things, as Scott said. On more technical side of things, migration to partial data to the cloud. Because again, the idea of this modern data platform was always that we are going to break the silos and make data available to business as and when needed. But what's been happening, where I've seen the challenges, is that you end up creating one NoSQL database here in the cloud, another one on premises, another analytical system in the cloud. There's another instance running for a different business. I was talking to a bank recently. They said they have 25 Kubernetes clusters in the cloud, and there are 6 of them on premises. And when we said, can you just walk us through, what's the rationale behind it? Yeah. So obviously the answer wasn't there. But I think this is kind of where, again, not pinpointing, I think this is kind of where the agility is absolutely what everyone is experiencing. But that key problem we're seeing is that data gravity, that breaking of the silos, because those things are still necessary. I mean, we've been talking about, everyone's been talking about that problem for almost a decade. So it's not something brand new that we are talking about today. But I think what we are highlighting is that the approach we are on currently is not necessarily addressing that problem. So what that means is that if you are enabling AI style use cases, then they still have to run around and find where the data is in the organization, and similar challenges to the data governance team, who have to still have a very large, complex data governance projects to even get hold of, that entire data sets. So that's one of the key challenges that we are seeing, which impacts the analytics and the AI workloads.
And I think that is spot on, because so many organizations have focused, rightly so, on agility of delivery to the end user and getting business value as quickly as possible. And for that agility, you almost need to move independently to a large extent. And what's happened is that's created silos within the organization. And definitely, if you have structural silos from an organizational structure, then that's going to be mirrored or replicated in the data silos. So the independence and the speed, create silos and then create silos in the data. So maybe let's talk about that piece first. So I know that you both are passionate about Data Fabric, and maybe that's a good place to start. I'll throw to Scott first. On the Data Fabric side, for the people that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what it is, type of problems that it solves, and maybe we'll start there?
Yeah, sure. So the Esmerald Data Fabric is the foundational layer under the Esmerald platform. And as a data platform, it set out to address a number of key issues. If we look at scale, scale is the first one. So organizations are getting more and more data. That's not new to anyone as data grows exponentially. Being able to scale the platform almost infinitely to keep up with that demand is one of the key aspects. The other key aspect of the fabric is being able to stretch a single global namespace across numerous data sets. So being able to bring those silos together under a common umbrella. So to the user accessing the data, they see it as a single data source. And that allows you to stretch that fabric, not just across some systems in your data center, but out to the edge, into the cloud, and start to really unify your data sets. The other part of it is when you're building a system like this and you're starting to bring all that data together, all of a sudden you've got security issues and data access issues across the business and the different users. So being able to secure that platform from end to end is key. And the other part of it is being able to effectively multi-tenant the platform. So now that you bring everything together, you still need some form of division at times, mainly for security and use case purposes. So they're probably some of the key areas that form that data fabric layer. But Ridhav might have a few extra points to throw on.
Yeah. I think it's more of the enabling thing, right? So back to the silo point, the reason why people say, okay, I want one MongoDB instance here, another Redshift here, another object store capability here, is that those applications would need those capabilities, right? And that's the inherent nature of different applications in a large, complex organization. Where Data Fabric concept is fairly unique is it's a unified layer which basically gives you all those capabilities. So if you need to use an S3 endpoint, you basically say, okay, I want to use an object store here for this application. You go request that tenancy or that capability, that tenant exactly from Data Fabric. You need a NoSQL database for one of your applications where you want to serve, millions of transactions in an hour for a banking application. So then you go create a NoSQL DB in the same layer itself. You want to stream data because, like, if you look at streaming, tables, NoSQL database, analytics, they all have one thing in common, that they all need that sort of large fabric storage underneath. So this is one unique approach which our founders of the Data Fabric had almost 10, 12 years ago, where they saw the unification of these capabilities, and they saw that these capabilities will be needed for most the enterprises of the future. So those were all the things that are unifiedly built into a single executable, which scales out, which is, I guess, the most unique technical capability out of the platform.
Yeah, definitely. That is excellent. And then how is it that the platform can, or I guess how does it work? Does the platform connect to existing, say, databases that are out there where the data is, or do they have to be created within the platform and the fabric itself?
Sure. So effectively, it's because it is providing you that large unified storage layer. So it will be bringing data from those sort of siloed systems and giving you that unified layer. So it's not necessarily a virtualization layer capability. It's actually like one of our customers, one of the large banks. So they had multiple data sets in multiple Hadoop environments, one for compliance purposes, one for data science, one for different purposes, and a large data lake in the cloud. They had some operational NoSQL databases, some analytical NoSQL databases. So effectively, what they started on the journey typically was not just availability of data to the applications, it's also cutting down the cost, right? When CIO looked at the bill, the utilization of the combined ecosystem, they ran an entire project on this. You would believe, have to believe me on that. So they ran the entire utilization project on it, and they saw 30% utilization throughout the combined ecosystem that they have.
Yeah,
and
wow.
Imagine those, 20 or 25 plus systems, which would be costing a significant amount of money to run and operate. So there's a straightforward business use case to then have that unified layer of bringing the data into a single place. The virtualization technologies have absolutely a place in the architectures of the modern platforms, but this is about actually bringing the data into a unified layer.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And we have some questions coming in from the audience. I'll might throw one at you guys, and then we can come back to maybe discuss some use cases. But we have a question from Nakul. Hey, Nakul. He says, do you believe some organizations think multi-tenancy and security first, and by that they make their offerings more complex and slower to get out in the market? So essentially, this is question or thinking about the balance between the complexity of the offering and the speed of getting to market. And the complexity of the offering can be multi-tenancy and security, things that might seem that they slow down versus the agility and the push to get to customer that people want. So do you guys have any views about the balance and maybe even how to start to shift it towards the right way if people feel that they're stuck?
Yeah, so I can take that. So they think about those things because I think we've all been, if you're a large bank or even if you're a small startup, security is absolutely the paramount thing, right? So if we ignore it in one case, then suddenly next day we might not even have half the business anymore, right? So this is kind of what forces them to start thinking from a security and even the multi-tenancy point of view, because those two things go hand in hand in any applications. So where I see the change which people needs to do to deliver, at a more agile pace is to just ignore about those things by having the right platform in place, right? For example, if S3 delivers multi-tenancy quite well, or if Data Fabric delivers multi-tenancy quite well, then inherently your application can assume that, look, if I'm going to carve out a portion of the platform that I'm using, then the multi-tenancy comes naturally and it flows naturally to your application. And so should security. So you shouldn't need to think about multi-tenancy and security every time you build a new app. Those are some of the foundational things that will be in the place in the first go.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, how about from your perspective, Scott? Do you have any further thoughts?
So look, it's a tricky one, and I think that it was even in your podcast you ran the other day, Philippe. There is a fine balance between security and agility, and there's not always a correct answer for it, depending on the use case, depending on the sensitivity of data, etc. And it's trying to find that balance in between that is quite key. You need to meet certain legal requirements often, and that can dictate what happens. But I think that trying to implement a foundation where it's almost inherent can kind of take that away a bit, so that you try and minimize the impact that it's having, and try and take that out of the ability to be agile and just have it inherent in the platform that you work from.
Yeah, love it. No, that's really good. We have also a question from Jason about how does HPE Ezmeral help accelerate the adoption of AI in an organization? So I think, this is a really good question, and definitely goes to some of the other topics but over to you guys.
Yeah, I can start that one. So the Esmerald platform, and we haven't touched on the other pillars quite so much yet, but it's I think it's a probably good segue into that, where HPE has brought together a number of these pillars and brought them together in a unified open platform. Now, what that gives the advantage of is not just having that foundational data fabric underneath, but implementing an open containerized platform and having a MLOps framework on the top that is all pre-integrated with data persistence sitting underneath in the storage layer, and having that in a framework that allows the end users to be able to build, train, deploy, monitor, re-engineer their data science models in a seamless way. We find that when those pillars are separate, and there's a lot of good solutions in the market for each of the pillars, where things start to get tricky is trying to integrate and manage that integration between those pillars. And having that all pre-integrated and defined can help take that part of the puzzle out of the workload that those users are trying to work against.
Yeah, that is excellent. Thank you very much. How about from your side, Ridhav? How do you see that HPE Ezmeral is helping accelerate the AI adoption?
Yeah, I think as Scott's highlighted most of those capabilities, I think I just want to reiterate the flow that for any AI project, the first thing is data, making data accessible, making compute and analytics accessible for a data scientist to then do cleansing and data cleaning and data processing, etc. And then a full framework where the data scientist doesn't have to wait for 5 days to get a certain GPU resource and 10 days to get a data, because end of the day, all of these things add up into their life cycle. If we want the data scientists to deliver like our development teams do in a more agile sprints, then we need to be able to give them the flexibility. And this is where I think industry, I'm very happy. I think this is one of the exciting areas of the industry around MLOps, where there are a lot of startups, mature organizations, AWS, Microsoft, HPE, they're all investing in having that standardized approach so that data scientists can get everything at the right go, access to the data, access to compute, and then capabilities to execute the business problem very, very quickly.
Yeah, that is excellent, and I think this is that's a really good segue where we might go into the poll answers actually. So I see that we have high or in the 90%, over 90% of people have answered the poll. So I'll share the results so everyone can see, and we can talk through where the audience is at in these different segments and help continue the conversation there. So the first question in the poll was, has the move to the cloud helped reduce the number of data silos in your organization? And it's a 60-40 split, with 60% of people are finding that it has reduced the number of silos, which is beneficial. And obviously 40% people haven't seen those benefits come through. From your perspectives, Scott or Ridhav, did you have any thoughts to share on this?
Just looking at the results there, I think that I think we've actually got a fairly progressive audience in the sense that I was expecting it to probably to be the other way, the outcome of that one, and that's the trend we've seen in the market. So, I think that it is something that's common. By moving workloads, coming back to my initial comments that I was making, by moving workloads to the cloud, we've often found that that's increased data silos because of that data gravity and so forth. So it starts to duplicate some, but there are abilities where I think that part of that move to the cloud is a reduction in the applications or a consolidation, and that may be that's one of the areas that can help the reduction of silos as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I do agree that it's definitely a progressive audience. From what I've seen is in the move to the cloud, as you were saying, the data gets replicated, and put into multiple areas, the same bits of data. So there's duplication there, or there's just a lift and shift. So the silos that existed before, they exist, but now they're in the cloud. Obviously the better approach is to try to avoid that. What do you think, Ridhav?
Yeah. I think I can actually understand why this will be like even a divisive question. Because I imagine the first time when I was working for a large telco here in Australia, and we were trying to deliver a project for them where we had to ingest around 35 different systems. So getting hold of those systems itself and the approval cycles and beyond the approval cycles and having the connectors to all of those was a fairly large chunk of time that we invested in sort of bringing that data fabric sort of unified layer. But what cloud or some of the move to cloud does bring in is that even though, as you said, there are silos, that there are multiple duplicate copies of the data, at least from an application team point of view, we don't feel that pain because if the data is even in 5 different silos, and if I'm being pointed at one area to say, here's how quickly you can get access to the data. So the agility is still there, right? So the agility, people have seen that agility is significantly improved. Now, obviously, the silos will impact the data governance team and will impact the bill in the end for the overall TCO of the solutions in the end. Yeah. But agility is what makes people obviously take a lot more that, okay, I can live with the silos because I at least get the agility out here.
Exactly. Yeah, no, completely agree. And as we were talking there, we had a comment coming from Jason saying that he says, I found it that it can be consolidated or duplicated as like the data silos as with the move to the cloud. So question number 2 there was, do you have issues accessing all of your organizational data? 100% of people said yes, that there's definitely issues there. From your perspective, guys, do you have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, look, it's very common. We hear that from pretty much all our customers. So I'm not surprised on that response. I think that's why with the Ezmeral platform, we're very heavily focused on that foundational layer. By putting in newer technologies, containerization, microservices, MLOps, all these types of capabilities into an organization, if you don't have access to the right data, then you're not going to get the value, full stop. So you need to start at that foundational layer and get that right. Make sure that you can access that data, and then the rest sort of flows from there.
Definitely. Like I've been in organizations where large organizations where I don't even know where to find this data, or I assume that the data is available, and times where I've had to go outside of the organization to get the data from external companies that were getting that data transferred to them and literally buy the organization's data back from an external party for us to be able to start projects while I sort of navigate the internal maze to try and get access to that internal. And that was like a period of months that could have easily been, weeks at a maximum. So yeah, I definitely feel the audience's pain. Ridhav, how about from your side? Any thoughts on sharing?
I was laughing because I exactly had the same problem where we actually ended up getting the high quality data from outside the organization. That has happened to me as well. So clearly it wasn't an anomaly. No, look, I think, and this is where, again, slightly a different point of view here. I agree with both what you guys said, is that in some cases, one part of me says, there's no way a large bank is going to get all of their data into a single place, so governance is going to be the key. Or when I think this question is more about not necessarily getting all the data from every single place into a single, that's obviously going to be not be possible with most large companies. But at least this is talking more about in the context of AI. That I was working with one of our customers here down in Melbourne where, it was taking them around 6 days to get data from the edge from a plant. It was taking them over 3 days to get data from the SAP system, unless otherwise they built up an entire middleware layer to get some, invested in a large project to fix that problem. Now, if they were doing it for a business application, investing in those technologies makes sense. But in case of an AI, that data could be useful or might not be useful, right? So like all the data scientists wanted to do was to bring data from the SAP systems to understand the plant's equipment, plant's history, take data from the edge, and solve a business problem using AI, which is, again, looking at the statistical data and understand the failure rate for a manufacturing equipment. So again, this question in my world is more about that, hey, can we break those silos and have those kind of critical business data sets in a place with a fully governed strategy to, again, enable those use cases quicker?
Yeah. And I think too, Philippe, accessing the data is one issue, but when you translate that through the pipeline to what business impact does that have, it's a cost impact. And that's where organizations start to struggle to get an ROI on their AI investments. And sometimes when they start struggling to get that ROI, they look back at the tools and they go, well, what's wrong with this tool? What's wrong with that? And sometimes it's that foundational access to the right data to get that value from it. That's why I'm actually really excited to listen to your presentation, Philippe, when you present at the Esmerald APAC launch in August.
Man, I'm super excited about that. So it's going to be an amazing event over 2 days, with the first day being focused on the leader side and addressing challenges. And then the second day on the technical side. How do we implement the right approaches and the right technologies in order to provide business value? Having the two sides is one of my passions, and being part of the Esmerald launch, it's an honor.
Yep. So if anyone's able to register for that, it's a free event, August 18 and 19.
Outstanding. Yeah.
Not too far away now.
Exactly. Cannot wait. That is excellent. So on going back to the poll, on question 3, we were asking about the use of containers and whether people are looking into it if they're not using it. So it was question was, are you using containers in your organization? If not, is your organization looking into it? And we got a 40-40 split between, yes, we're using containers. So lots of organizations on the containers journey already, which is great. And then another 40% of attendees said, no, not using containers yet, but looking into it. And we had 20% of people said not looking into containers yet. So not in the horizon. Did you guys have any thoughts to share on those?
Yeah, so look, I think that's probably accurate. I see that organizations are starting to sort of dabble in the container space, some more progressed than others and already running it successfully in production. I think that where the challenge sometimes comes in is, how do you pick the right container? Where do you run it? How do you get that flexibility, elasticity, etc.? And it's getting those aspects right that I think is probably the key challenge that organizations are facing with that particular technology.
Yeah, 100%. Because there's organizations that haven't looked into it at all, and then other organizations, like Ridhav was saying, where they would have 20, 30 container environments running at once. Ridhav, from your perspective, any thoughts on to share on this question, on these answers?
Yeah. So I think, again, as Scott said, it's I guess a right depiction of what we are seeing as well. And I guess for some customers, it doesn't even make sense to look at containers as a kit, because at the end of the day, we need to start identifying the capability that these technologies are delivering, right? End of the day, either are they helping you deliver a new capability to the business, or are they helping you reduce certain cost, right? So containers have obviously played a part in all the different areas. Like one of our customers, they used containers and Kubernetes to that customer we were talking about earlier, where they had 30% utilization across, 15, 20 different data environments. So in their case, they brought all the data into a single unified layer. But then that's just the data, right? They still have to run analytics. They still have to provide applications to their businesses to consume the data. So there they needed a layer where they could have a multi-tenant system, right? So there it was not just providing a new capability. It was basically a cost exercse that by bringing this entire environment together in a single unified platform, they were able to reduce the TCO by almost $6 million, over the period of 2 years. Because, rather than running those things individually, you bring all of them in a single place. So containers and Kubernetes was just an enabler for them to reduce the overall TCO and then scale out cheaper. On the other hand, we had some customers where there were some capabilities they couldn't even deliver without containers. Like we were working with another financial services customers where they were needing to scale out some of the compute style capabilities, some of the analytics workloads, some of their microservices application, they were struggling to scale in the previous virtual machine world. So over there, it wasn't a choice. It was basically a necessity for them to be able to using technologies like this to, introduce those new capabilities in the business and make sure the business is performing well. So I think those are the two key customers who I see benefit significantly from these capabilities. Either they're helping reduce cost of the overall architecture, or they are introducing new capabilities to deliver something, which they're struggling to deliver in the previous test cases. And on the other hand, there are some customers where things are running perfectly fine in the virtual machine world or in the cloud world or the on-premises world. For those customers, this is the unnecessary complexity, which they can simply avoid.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and in our case, at sort of at my work in my day job, we're in healthcare, and one of the use cases that pushed us into containers was around encryption in privacy preserving data manipulation. So that was definitely an really interesting use case where we had to go the extra mile, and we're seeing huge benefits from it. So. Yeah, really great. The last question on the poll was around productionizing machine learning models. So the question was, is it easy to deploy machine learning models into production in your organization? Very, very one-sided. 100% of people said no, definitely not easy at all. I totally understand that's where a lot of people's pain is at the moment. Through the podcast and this series, we get a lot of questions about ML ops. So I think this is going to be a great topic to discuss for the next few minutes. Gentlemen, from your perspective, productionizing machine learning models, any thoughts to share?
Yeah, look, I'll start. The results don't surprise me. We hear this all the time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest challenges that organizations have. And I think that part of the reason is that they don't have a framework in place to support the process. But it's not just that framework. Again, it comes down to the people, process, technology. But if we take a step back, it's running those AI models and being able to get through the different layers of the entire solution seamlessly is key. And that's why with Esmerald, we put so much focus on bringing those pillars together. So the topic today was around those three pillars. Having them somewhat separated causes a lot of that pain. When a data scientist wants to develop a model, the first thing he needs, as Ridhav pointed out earlier, is access to the data. Now, without that in place with the data fabric and that strong foundation sitting underneath, then you start getting all sorts of challenges. How do you then get data at scale to train that model in a seamless way? And different parts of the puzzle require different resources the amount of storage for the data, the amount of compute required. So you need to be able to separate those to be able to drive it successfully.
Very, very, very good. Very important. Very nice. Ridhav, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think this is one perfect example of where, and I'm connecting those two things together, but this is a perfect example of my previous example I gave is that here containers is a necessity, right? Because what is MLOps? MLOps is all about providing a framework so that we can apply DevOps style methodology to machine learning. Because end of the day, the business goal is to deliver machine learning to production quicker and faster and better. That's the end goal here. So rather than a data scientist requesting a GPU server, on premises or in the cloud, building their workspaces, trying to figure out if they can use TensorFlow here, but here they want to use MLflow, but in this case, Kubeflow might make more sense, or some of the Selden to deploy the machine learning models. So there are a number of these capabilities, and then they say, okay, yeah, I need all of that. So let me bring all of those things together myself, which is again not the best use of their time, because we hired these data scientists to help us solve a business problem, not create a mix of IT technology stacks. So this is where I'm quite excited. And it's not just HPE. I'll be upfront here. There's a very strong push in the market, as would have seen with your previous audiences as well, around solving this problem. It's a very hard problem to solve, but this is one problem where containers make perfect sense, right? Because what data scientists need, and I'll take an example of healthcare customer that we work with. So their, initially their data science workspaces, or if a data science would get on board, it used to take them around 2 weeks to onboard the data scientist, right? Because they will have to carve out a specific VM or a large machine for him or her, and then give them access to certain data sets here, certain data sets there, and then give them certain libraries to access here. So it was a very large process, right? So what MLOps style capabilities bring them is I have a containerized workspace where I have packaged all the dependencies that we believe a data scientist would need in my company. And a click of a button, they get a data science workspace. Okay, so I'm a healthcare company and they're working on a specific genomic research project. My genomic research project data is in a certain tenancy in my data fabric or my storage layer. I'm going to make sure that every time I spin up a person who is joining a group in my Active Directory of genomic research data scientist, it's by default connected to the, my data sets that the team owns already. And because the team already owns a set of GPUs and infrastructure already, the workspace of data scientists is already connected to that resources. So if I want to start looking at the data, training the model, etc., then that's already available for me. So on day one, that MLOps methodology brings that first thing to the data scientist, right? Now, in their data science lifecycle, they might be working on a problem where their teammate had already extracted some features, right? So now in the older world, you will have to go ask for those models, bring them into their workspaces. But here comes things like model registry, model management, so where they can collaborate quite well together, right? So I have my data science model ready. Now I did the training in my shared resources. I released the GPU back so the other people are using it. Now I want to deploy it. So earlier, and this is from my big data days, once the data science model was created, it used to take us weeks, if not months, to bring it to the Spark ML or the Spark side, build a data engineering pipeline to deploy it, and create a REST endpoint and expose these things out. Again, those kind of things are now automated in the MLOps world, where a containerized model with a single click would be deployed. And this is where beauty of Kubernetes comes in, that you can, if that model is about simply scoring if a machine is going to fail or not, that might only need to run once or twice a day. But if that model is about predicting a fraud, then your banking app could be calling that 100,000 times a day, which can be easily scaled out with the technologies like Kubernetes. So it's a very long-winded answer, but I just wanted to give you that journey of how the technologies like MLOps make a difference into the data science workloads.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes a huge difference. And I think so many people feel that a lot of their work is even trapped without the help of ML ops to be able to find a path and essentially like a rail to be able to ship their products to customers. And in this space, I really feel like data science and the analytics space is kind of growing up in the sense of almost going from from closer to either research and then a cottage industry to now having something where we got factories where we're able to create and deploy, send these products out to customers, which is the supply chain component is really important.
Yeah, no, I that's exactly how I was explaining to one of my customers yesterday that think of this like a factory approach, right? Mm-hmm. That's a perfect summation of what MLOps is about. One thing I really like, and one of the reasons why I actually joined HPE was HPE actually took a very unique approach. So in the MLOps world, there are some very opinionated tooling out there. Mm. And then there is a strong open source tooling out there. Mm-hmm. From my experience with the past working with data scientists as a data guy, is every time you come up with a certain workbench or a certain way of doing things, you will always get a pushback from the data science community that basically hinders them more rather than enable them. So this is where I quite like HPE approach, where our product management, they basically adopted technologies like Kubeflow and MLflow, which have become industry standard in the open source world, in the cloud, on premises, where we've adopted those capabilities and integrated into our environment, which gives, at least for me as a field guy, to build out and doing the solutioning much more easier with that extensive community behind it.
Man, I was wondering about your views between the opinionated side and the open source side. So that's really good. Scott, from your perspective, any other thoughts on MLOps?
No, look, I think it's an exciting and growing space. Coming back to another example, BMW, and this is a unique example for their autonomous driving. Part of the challenge there is not just creating the models, it's access to the data. So for self-driving cars, the data is being generated in the car itself. It's not always connected. It's getting that data back to a centralized area where it can be used for the training. But to continually train and improve the models, you need to push the updated models out to those vehicles. So having a model running inside the car doing real-time decisioning is quite exciting. That's basically the tech summary behind an autonomous vehicle. But the whole process and the machine that makes that up is quite complex, and being able to simplify that as much as possible is absolutely key. And I know that we're sort of running out of time, but during the Esmerald launch, we have Des Verana from DXC, who's going to be talking about that specific use case in a lot more detail. So if people are interested, come along to that session.
Well, that is great. Yeah, I was about to ask you about on a bit more about the launch coming up. So 18th and 19th of August. It's not the full day. It's a part of the day. The sessions, I found them really focused, really high return, and really, really good content. Do you guys want to share a bit more about what people can expect in the launch?
Yeah, so there's a mix of speakers from internally within the HPE team, some of our CTO, et cetera, who will give a lot more overview of the platform itself. But we do also have customer use cases and examples to cover some of the use cases that sit behind that and how it's being utilised and the benefits that it's bringing organisations. As you mentioned, there's a bit more of a tech sort of focus as part of it as well, so people can pick and choose which parts are valuable to them.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, so from the schedule, I see data-driven organizations that has a session, advancing the future of driving with AI, as you mentioned, from this Verana. Obviously, I'll be doing a talk about getting return on your AI and getting the business value. There's data-driven engagement, digital transformation, open architecture platforms. The sessions look fantastic. There's a technical demo by NVIDIA as well, day 2. So I'm sure that'll be a popular one. I'm hoping that people come along and join what's going to be a really great couple of days.
Yep. And I think the key thing is that, again, coming back to the very start of this conversation, people see HPE as a hardware organization, and it's showing that HPE Ezmeral is completely not that.
That's right. And we had a comment from Jason saying that, HPE Esmerald, it does the end-to-end, it empowers data scientists to be able to provide value to the business and helps with along all the steps that they might need support with, and makes that easy for them to get their value to customers and to the business. So I think from my perspective, that's it in a nutshell. I really like that comment. How about you guys? How do you feel?
No, I think he summed it up perfectly.
All right, gents. Well, this has been amazing. I can't believe the hour has flown. I've really enjoyed the conversation. The audience had excellent questions and comments. So Scott, Ridhav, I want to thank you so much for coming along and sharing your insights, your perspectives, what you're seeing in the market, and how to solve some of those challenges that we saw, from the poll, that people are finding a little trouble in trying to grapple their way through these. So having your perspective has been invaluable. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for the audience who joined.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you again soon. Bye. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.